Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Bob Johnson Auto Group, proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson. Believing an informed public makes for a stronger community. BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour was made at the Seneca Meadows, always one of the great marketing names in local history. Kind of sounds like a golf course or a retirement community, the Seneca Meadows. Well, it is not. Seneca Meadows is the name of the largest landfill in New York State. Located in Seneca Falls, the landfill can receive up to 12,000 pounds of new trash each day, most of it coming from downstate via truck. It employs 160 people full-time. The landfill itself is 400 acres. But the landfill is approaching its licensed capacity, and the owner would like to expand it. Another 15 years of taking in trash there. In return, they're offering millions of dollars to the local government, extending the current agreement that town leaders say keeps taxes down. But a growing movement has formed to oppose the expansion of this landfill, from school teachers to business owners to many parents of young children who've told us they've had to keep their kids inside on beautiful summer days because of the smell or the vapors. They're worried about the effect on their family's health. New York State Assemblymember Anna Kellis told us a year ago that the state should deny the company's request to expand. Ultimately, this will be up to Governor Hochul and the State Department of Environmental Conservation. But the state might have been watching for a sign earlier this month from the local government, and the Seneca Falls Town Board voted to approve the expansion of this landfill. The board meets again tomorrow night, and there will be a local demonstration. And this hour, we want to understand the perspectives involved here. Let me welcome first Yvonne Taylor, who is co-founder and vice president of the Seneca Lake Guardian. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Evan.
Mark Pittifer is with us, the special project manager for Waterloo Container. Mark, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Michelle Grillone is with us, who is a local parent and has a lot to say from that parent perspective. Michelle, welcome. Thanks for making time for us.
Thank you, Evan. I appreciate it.
We're going to start this program with the short conversation I had this morning with the town supervisor from Seneca Falls. That's Frank Schmitter. The supervisor was not able to join us live on the program, but was generous enough with his time to record that interview with me this morning. And for a little perspective here, the Seneca Falls Town Board had two separate votes about a month ago. And the town supervisor is one of the voting members of the board. So there's 5 voting members. The supervisor is one of them. And the votes went 4-1 and 3-2. The supervisor was the one who was changed his vote. So it's not a change of a vote. I'll explain here. The first is an agreement that essentially honors the company that wants to run this landfill's desire to run the landfill. The second is the kind of the expansion agreement. And the supervisor is going to explain in this interview why he was yes on one and no on the other, but also his perspective on who is going to make this final decision. So let's listen to my conversation from just a couple of hours ago with the supervisor of the Seneca Falls, Frank Schmitter.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Well, let me start with this question. A year ago, when we were first hearing about the possible end of capacity or reaching capacity of this landfill, and then this idea that the company wanted to go another 15 years to 2040. I know there's been a lot of debate. Do you think it is inevitable that this is going to happen, that the state's going to approve it, and that people need to sort of understand that this is coming one way or another?
That's impossible for me to answer because the state, I have no idea what they will do. I think the misunderstanding is people think we have control, but it's really totally up. If the state gives them a permit, they will be operating.
Okay. And so then on those grounds, take me through the vote that got all that attention 4 weeks ago, the vote in which there's a 4-1 vote, there's a 3-2 vote, and take me through, because you're a voting member of the board, take me through what those votes mean and why you voted the way you did.
Okay, so the first vote was on the host community agreement. Okay, the 4 of us voted for that. I think that's very important for the town to have in place. It's basically, I see it like an insurance policy. If we do not have the host community agreement signed, they basically do not have to pay us. They'd go back to the old structure from the earlier permit. And with this new host agreement, if the state gives them the permit, and that's, once I must emphasize, only if the state gives them the permit, then the host community agreement kicks in. At that point, we'll be getting paid a significant more amount of money, and it's an insurance policy. If they get the permit, we get paid. If they don't get the permit and they're forced to close, then we don't get anything.
Okay.
Now, as far as,
yeah, I'm sorry. Take me through the second vote then.
Okay, so as far as the permit goes, that's basically saying, do we want the landfill to be permitted to operate in the town of Seneca Falls? So three of them voted for it, and two of us voted against it. My thought why I voted against it is I feel I need to protect the people in this town. I want to emphasize, I do believe the landfill does a very nice job. Kyle and his crew do give good effort to keep it as safe as possibly can. I just feel a landfill should not be located so close to schools. You know, we need to protect our children. If this becomes a factor with the children, it should be our job as their responsibility to protect them from any health hazards that could be there. What I feel a landfill should be put out somewhere rural where there's no schools, no housing, no community within 25 miles. There is spots like that in New York State, and that's what the state needs to do. That's my vote and why I voted no for the permit.
Okay, so your position, tell me if I'm stating this correctly, is the first vote, you want to make sure that if the state greenlights this, the town still benefits and gets revenue here. The second vote is, if it's up to you, you would not vote to expand it. You want to see this capped where it is.
Correct. I would like to see it put more in a rural area. We do need to dispose of our trash, and people need to stop making all the trash we make. You know, we can cut back by recycling and composting and stuff, and we've set up good programs in Seneca Falls to do that. But in general, it could be located in a much rural place to make it safer for the citizens of the state, actually.
Now, some of the people who oppose this project's expansion have said that the town votes, both of the votes, not just the second vote, both of the votes are an indication to the state of where the town stands. So when you vote for the host agreement, it's the town's way of saying to the state, go for it, go ahead. Like we're on board in some way. Do you disagree with that?
I think I do. I think the state is doing the way they handle it. They're looking into, you know, the public's going to have a chance to comment to the state once all the paperwork is filed by the landfill for this permit. So I think during that time is when the people need to speak to the state. They need to reach out to their, you know, legislators and talk to them about it. I don't think this town board really has any say whether or not that landfill is open or closed.
Okay. And when it comes to the vote of the board on the operating permit, you disagreed with the majority. What is your understanding after talking to your colleagues on the board who voted for it? What is your understanding about why they did vote to greenlight this?
Well, I don't want to speak for them. I think they're and them, they think it's okay, would be my take on it. I mean, we didn't really have a meeting afterwards. We all voted. You know, we all had our time. They all were given the opportunity at the meeting to say why they voted for it. And I know one person that voted for it, in his theory is kind of correct. He said, if we have a permit, at least we can hold them accountable for the things, you know, the odor and stuff like that. With no permit in place, they're not violating anything. So with the rules of the permit, then we have some enforcement power, was his taking on it. So in that regards, he is correct.
Okay, but what's an example of how you hold the landfill to account when there are odor problems, when it's difficult for kids to even play outside? What can you do?
Well, I mean, we're working with the landfill. Once an odor is detected, they're supposed to take action. And this is all in the new host community agreement, where they will try to cover up more of the hill. They will do whatever they can to get the odor to stop. If they have to cap something or cover more ground or slow down how many trucks are coming in, you know, dumping at that time. So there is stuff that they need to take action of once an odor is detected. And I feel like they are going to try to do their best. I mean, they're trying to serve the community well. It's a landfill, and it's going to have smell, and that's why it needs to be located in a more rural area, in my opinion.
All right, Mr. Supervisor, finally, the last subject I just want to make sure I get your perspective on is money. I've got a number of emails from people who live in the area who have been saying that this is all about money, follow the money, and they make 2 points. The first is that this idea that we're going to expand the landfill capacity to 2040, and because of the way this agreement sets up, that's tens of millions of dollars for Seneca Falls, and that's very attractive to the town. It makes operating the town easier. So that's one thing. But the other point that people are or at least alleging, I guess I would say, is wondering how much money is actually flowing, or are campaigns being funded? How invested is this company in what's happening with this decision? So can you address both those points?
I mean, the host community agreement is a lot of money, I feel that we're protected if the state gives them the permit, because if the state gives them the permit, they're going to be operating. We haven't given them a town permit for, well, we're going on like 14 months now, or 16 months, and they're still operating. So our permit's not going to stop them either way. So if the state gives it to them, we're protected with the host agreement. It is a lot of money, but I still feel I would rather protect the children, my own vote, than worry about the money part. Can the town function without that money? Absolutely. Would we have to make some cuts? Absolutely. But it could be done. We already, myself and my town manager, have worked on some numbers, because if it does close, it could be, at the end of this year. So we've worked on numbers on basically right now, if we didn't cut anything, the average $200,000 house, the town tax would go up $500 approximately. Okay. What cuts I truly believe we could almost bring the budget. There'd be no increase without that money.
Okay. What about the second part? People are wondering, is this company investing in political leadership in other ways? What do you know about that?
Well, I think we see it every year when, every 2 years when there's an election, people in this town get tons of flyers mailed to them. And when it says, who they come from, I think it's no surprise that, yes, they are involved in the elections of this town. I'm hoping they step away from that and don't do that, but we can't control what people want to spend their money on.
And everything, as far as you know, all of their spending has been legal and above board?
Yes, that I know of, yes. I've done no investigation into it. It's not my place.
Okay. Lastly, and I'll let you go, and I really appreciate your time, Mr. Supervisor. How is the quality of how is the quality of life there, and does it suffer because of this landfill on a near daily basis in your mind?
I think we've probably lost some businesses because of the landfill being here. That whole corridor, no one's going to develop there. I do have, obviously the quality of life can be, like if you're going to plan a picnic or a wedding or something in your yard, you might not have to worry about rain that day, but you might have to worry about odors. So it does affect the people. And the worst part of it, it's got this town totally divided. I mean, people that are for and people that are against it. And it makes it tough just to, it's sad to see people that, not getting along because of an issue like this. I would like to see everybody in this town, we have to accept what happens. If the state gives them the permit, then, let's all work together to do our best to, for the town and keep things moving in the right direction.
Sure, I understand that, but you don't think the town is like evenly 50-50 on this issue, do you?
No, my guess it's probably 25% against it, maybe 20% for it, and the people that are for it, honestly, they're worried about their taxes going up because of all the propaganda that's out there. And I honestly think 50% of the town doesn't have an opinion one way or another. It really just goes about their daily life and doesn't worry about it. I don't think it's, 90% against it like that, because I would say probably no person would really want a landfill unless, the money part is there, I mean, there's no other benefit for the town other than the financial. I mean, but most people, you talked about it, really don't have an opinion on it one way or another.
That's the Seneca Falls Town Supervisor, Frank Schmitter, who recorded that interview with me just this morning, and I'm grateful for his time. We're talking about the proposal to expand the largest landfill in New York State, which is Not downstate, not near New York City, not on Long Island. It's in the Finger Lakes. Seneca Meadows is what it's called. It's got a nice sounding name, but it's 400 acres of landfill, and the owners want to expand its intake for another 15 years. Right now, it can bring in 6,000 tons of new trash every day, most of it from downstate. Seneca Falls Town Board, you just heard, has, in their own way, green-lit this, but the state is going to decide. So Governor Hochul could intervene. State DEC has something to say. And you just heard the conversation with the town supervisor about his position. And let me bring back our guests who are joining us on the line this hour. And let me start with Yvonne Taylor, who's co-founder and vice president of the Seneca Lake Guardian. What stands out to you from that conversation first and foremost?
Thanks for asking, Evan. First of all, I want it to be clear that our legal team sent the Seneca Falls Town Board in September of last year and again last week a letter outlining their responsibility in this entire process with the landfill. We explained to them that the state does indeed give the town deference on whether or not they want the landfill to continue, and that there is case law supporting their ability to say no. So they've received this letter not once but twice, and to have Supervisor Schmitter get on and say it's really not up to the town is either woeful ignorance of the law or a willful disregard of those laws, and it's an embarrassment to everyone in this region who is depending on the town to make the right decision moving forward for our future.
Let me follow up on that point here. So the supervisor is basically saying, look, the state is the ultimate arbiter of this. He doesn't think that they're looking to the town. I asked him directly, do you think that they're going to take what the town board did a month ago and say, okay, that's the de facto thumbs up. Let's go ahead and greenlight this. And he says he doesn't think so, that they'll decide independently. And all Seneca Falls was doing, in his view, at least the way he voted, all Seneca Falls was doing was making sure that if the state greenlights it, that they still get the money, that they can keep taxes low, that they get a financial benefit of this landfill continuing to grow. So he was working in a pragmatic sense there. What do you think?
What I think is they are failing to understand the state environmental quality review process that they should be well aware of, because on their own website from 2007 is a PowerPoint which states that the town is not legally allowed to enter into a host community agreement with the landfill unless and until permits from the state have been issued. So there's some question there as to whether they understand their laws, and there is some real concern that they think that they don't have any say in this process. It's clearly laid out in the state environmental quality review process, where they say, quite frankly, they give a lot of deference to the town. So the town to go ahead and approve of both of these items, the local operating permit and the host community agreement, gives the Department of Environmental Conservation the false misunderstanding that the town and the people who are represented in the town are in favor of this landfill's expansion.
Well,
and that is flat wrong.
You also heard him say, Yvonne, that he only thinks roughly 25% of the people of Seneca Falls are fully opposed to this landfill. His estimate was 25% of the people of the town are opposed to the landfill, maybe 20% support it, mostly on the idea that they like the benefit to their tax bill, and then the rest of the people, don't really care one way or the other. What do you think?
Again, that's outrageous. They have had public hearings. They have had public participation in their comprehensive plan. And again, without fail, the overwhelming vocal majority is saying, shut the landfill down. It's harming our community. They received over 1,200 emails before this vote from people requesting that they do not accept the local operating permit or the host community agreement. They had hundreds of people show up at a public hearing and speak out against them voting on these two issues. And so for him to say, oh, gee, I don't know, it seems like really it's, I don't know, I'm sorry, I'm not going to curse on the radio, but that is not an accurate representation of what's going on in his town.
Let me ask Mark and Michelle for their thoughts, first of all, and then we're going to get a little bit more specific about some of the things that the supervisor said. Mark Pittifer is Special Project Manager for Waterloo Container. Mark, remind listeners how far away Waterloo Container is from this landfill.
About 100 yards or so. It's right across the street, unfortunately.
Okay. And what stands out to you from the conversation you just heard with the supervisor?
Well, a lot. In some ways, I'd like to thank Supervisor Schmitter for what he said about wanting to protect the residents, and we happen to agree with him that, there is no place for this landfill in Seneca Falls. I mean, I'd like to remind you and to the listeners, Seneca Falls is the birthplace of women's rights, the home of the Women's Rights National Historic Park, the inspiration for the movie It's a Wonderful Life, and right down the road from the birthplace of Memorial Day, the landfill and what it's done to this community, like the supervisor said, from a divisive standpoint, it is the antithesis of what it means to be a native to Seneca Falls and what we stand for. We also have the Cayuga Nation here. This is the antithesis of how they view land. And really, Evan, I appreciate you giving us the time to talk about this, because for us it's disruptive to business. What the town can do, Town Code Section 300-26B states that odor, no use within any district shall emit an odor that is unreasonably offensive as measured at the property line of use. So I'll just give you one clear example, and it's very sad and it's embarrassing. We host dignitaries quite frequently. The owner of our company, this is a family-owned company, we're now in our 45th year. Can you imagine having a United States congressperson coming in and having a smell that they're not familiar with? So when they get hit with it, they get nervous right off the bat. And we have to just explain, sorry, it's just the landfill across the street. But the worst thing is we have employees that have become ill. And on the bad odor days, we have employees that have to be sent home. And one of our employees who wishes to remain nameless, he lives 8 miles away in Tyre. And he wrote a letter to the board last month that said even when he goes home from work after smelling landfill odor all day, he's forced to close the windows and run air filtration units. He had to buy special filtration units all the way 8 miles away in Tyre, which is an added financial burden because the odor is all the way in Tyre, New York. So as far as beyond the property line of use, it's ridiculous. It's constantly behind the property line of use. But a lot has been discussed here. It is true that businesses have turned away from this corridor. We've even had trouble attracting and retaining people to come here. We no longer have company picnics on site. We no longer use our picnic tables that are outside. And quite frankly, Evan, there are a lot of health risks, both known and unknown. And I think that's one of the most scary things for our organization.
You're hearing Mark Pittifer, who's the Special Project Manager for Waterloo Container, a business right next door to this landfill. And Mark's right, the supervisor of Seneca Falls, Frank Schmitter, did say he thinks the presence and the expansion of this landfill shuts down any hope in that corridor for bringing new business. It's one of the costs of the landfill. Michelle Grillone, a local parent, do you want to describe what it's like raising kids, and how far away are you from the landfill?
Thanks, Evan. Yes, so every single day is a concern. We wake up, and the first thing I do at like 5 a.m. as I look out to see which way my flag is flying, because I want to know if Waterloo's going to get hit with it or Seneca Falls is going to get hit with it for the day. And I live in Waterloo, and so when I see that the wind is blowing east, I'm as happy as can be, because unfortunately, I think the landfill is also splitting the towns. Seneca Falls gets all of the money. They are the ones that benefit from this. Waterloo gets nothing, except our schools are affected daily, our homes are affected daily, our quality of air, children are getting sick, and there's nothing that we benefit from at all. And for some reason, only Seneca Falls, they get to vote on this. They get the benefit, even though businesses to the right and left, the north and south of Seneca Meadows, if you look at their address, they all say Waterloo, New York. But and essentially the dump is in Waterloo. But because of an agreement, I don't know how many years ago, Seneca Falls gets to basically call the shots. And it's really unfortunate. I live about 5 miles away. I smell it all the time. I have to keep my kids inside when it smells because I've done so much research over the years and I know just how detrimental it is to them. I am a parent that picks up my kids when it smells, at school. If it smells on the athletic fields, that's something I'm really concerned about in the playgrounds that my kids are at, that are less than 1 mile from the dump. It's obviously concerning on a daily basis. And there's days that I'll put my kids in the car and we get in the car and we drive the opposite direction because I want them to be able to, play outside and not have to endure all the chemicals in their lungs.
I have to say, to Michelle's point, the first time that I hosted a program on the Seneca Meadows landfill, the largest in the state, when I looked it up on the map, I remember thinking, wait, is it in Waterloo? It's really close to Waterloo. And it is pretty wild for it to be that close to Waterloo. It's kind of split between Seneca Falls and Waterloo, but technically, yes, Seneca Falls gets the benefit of this. And so, so Michelle's right on that point. And you heard the supervisor of Seneca Falls earlier this hour, Frank Schmitter, tell us that if we didn't see the expansion of this landfill, it could lead to an increase of about $500 per $200,000 home in Seneca Falls in new taxes. So that's the benefit. It is significant. It's millions of dollars a year. And he thinks that's one of the reasons that some people, especially on the town board, continue to green light the expansion of this landfill that is supposed to be capped this year. This is supposed to be it. But now the company that owns it wants a new 15-year expansion, and they may very well get it. So what I want to do is after we take our only break of the hour, I want to address a couple of the things that the supervisor said and make sure that our listeners do understand what is going on. It's the largest landfill in the state, but wherever you live, there may be a landfill near you that has caused you to ask questions about who owns this thing, who gets to control if it keeps growing, where does our trash go otherwise, why does it come here on trucks from downstate, who greenlights it, who's in control. So we're trying to talk about all of that in advance of another town board meeting for Seneca Falls tomorrow night. Seneca Lake Guardian has been organizing against this project, but I do want to understand all the people voting for it. And members of the Seneca Falls Town Board who voted for this project, you continue to be invited. We would love to have you on this program in the future if you want to come on. I'm grateful that the supervisor, Frank Schmitter, who is a voting board member, did come on in a taped, recorded conversation this morning. We're also joined by Yvonne Taylor, Mark Pittifer, Michelle Grillone, telling their stories, and we'll come right back. We'll take some of your feedback as well in our second half hour. This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Yvonne Taylor from Seneca Lake Guardian, I want to ask you about some of what the supervisor of Seneca Falls said on this program earlier this hour. Supervisor Schmitter said that when the odor gets to a certain point, or when it sort of breaches the facility there, that there, in his words, there are actions that can be taken to hold the landfill owners accountable. Do you find that to be true?
Not in my experience, no. The sad reality is that people are in the surrounding area have what we call complaint fatigue, because there's a hotline they're supposed to call when they detect odor. They make a call. A landfill operator shows up who's been at the landfill all day, comes out, sniffs the air, sometimes doesn't even get out of their vehicle, and then they'll say, no, I don't smell anything, or it must be something else. It's not the landfill. And so there are no real repercussions. For making a report, for filing a complaint, and it's exhausting for people living there. A lot of them are just like, well, what's the point of even trying now? There are no repercussions for calling in an odor complaint.
Okay. Mark Pittifer, you work right across the street. Do you find that to be the case?
I find that happens, and it's unfortunate, but I think most importantly, if the DEC is listening to this call, they know that people smell odor. They know that we have odor. And as a matter of fact, it's a great segue because once we found out that the National Cancer Institute did a study that found that lung cancer cases in Seneca County from 2016 to 2020 were 30% higher than the state average and 34% higher than the national average, on top of the fact that the odor reporting from the landfill kept saying that no odor was detected at our complaint site, which is across the street. Our company president and founder decided to invest tens of thousands of dollars in state-of-the-art H2S monitoring equipment. Well, hydrogen sulfide is usually associated with odor, and I'm going to quote the World Health Organization. They say that hydrogen sulfide concentrations should not exceed 5 parts per billion ever to avoid substantial complaints about odor. For context, at Waterloo Container, our device detected H2S at or over 5 parts per billion 139 different times over the last 6 months, which is 75% of all workdays during that period of time. So we've proven there is an odor problem. And in our opinion, it's an odor issue that they cannot control, Evan.
Have you thought about moving, Mark? Have you thought about moving operations or moving your family or moving yourself?
When the company was founded and when this building was built, you really couldn't see the landfill, okay? It was really just like a field, sort of like viewing it as your backyard. Well, our backyard's full now, okay? No one ever could have conceived. Every time there was an end date, it got expanded and expanded and expanded at the cost of business owners like Bill Lutz that have invested millions, tens of millions in this community, providing good-paying, quality jobs for people in this county and the surrounding region. I mean, what would you do? What would you do? You can't just pack up and leave. But the frustrating thing is, you know, we really care about this community. And so I read you the town code, section 300-26B, and we've detected 75% of the time in the last 6 months there have been code violations.
And nothing happens?
So it's very difficult to see something happen. Very difficult. And it's very frustrating for our employees because just with the example of it was Friday. It was Friday. I came into work right at about 5 after 8. I had 6 different employees saying, oh, my God, the odor from the landfill's trapped in the front office. So what do? The county health department is telling us if you smell this odor, this landfill gas, you should open the doors and windows. If I open the doors and windows, more landfill odor is going to get trapped up in the front offices. So, you know, I sympathize with our employees. They are great people. But how frustrating do you think it is to them when I'm cutting all this red tape and going through the chain of command at the town level and nothing is happening? And then you have a vote, like you just said. I think that's the most eye-opening thing. You hold off on voting on an operating permit, the local town operating permit, for a calendar year because of ongoing odor issues. Yet 3 of the 5 did a 180 in March and voted for it. So it's very frustrating when you're a business, when you're employing over 100 people, when they have to show up to work and we have to worry, is it going to be a bad odor day or a normal day?
Yeah, let me get Michelle on this, and then Joseph and Hector, I'll take your phone call in a second, and then I've got a pile of emails to read. I do understand the argument. I will say this. I do understand the argument that if you're the governor's office or if you're the state DEC and you see the town board voting to greenlight this, it makes it hard for the DEC to believe that the opposition is that virulent. But the supervisor of Seneca Falls disagrees with that take. He thinks that really isn't relevant. It's not pertinent to what the state's going to do. It's entirely up to the state. Our guests who are on the line with us who oppose the expansion of this landfill say that ignores what they think is the reality of how these decisions are going to get made here. And I will say, Michelle, I want to get your take on this. You mentioned that as a Waterloo resident, you're right next door, but you don't get the benefits of a lower tax bill that Seneca Falls residents get. Seneca Falls is the beneficiary in so many ways of this landfill if there are benefits, at least in terms of economics. I don't recall the part of It's a Wonderful Life where Jimmy Stewart is dancing on the landfill. I must have missed that part. But, I mean, it has become this part of Seneca Falls lore. Would you take a $500 deduction in your local taxes, and then would that change your mind as a Waterloo resident? Would that sway you at all?
Absolutely not. I think that if you don't have your health, then what do you have? I mean, you could have millions of dollars. They could offer me millions. And I don't think I would take it to live closer to the dump for the rest of my life and for my children and my grandchildren at some point when that happens. No, I completely would love to have this massive landfill close. It's something that we have thought about moving on multiple occasions, but with 3 children in school and our jobs here, you know, obviously that's a vast undertaking. And there are ages now that, you know, they want to finish, you know, their middle school out here or high school here. And so it would be really difficult to do that. I think that back to the accountability of the dump, I'm someone who calls regularly, even though it is inconvenient, it is tiresome. I constantly call. I've been at baseball games and football games where there's 45 people with their shirts over their noses because they can't breathe and the kids are coughing on the football field, and I call. And then they say that somebody gets sent. You know, again, this is someone who's been working in this environment for the past however many hours. And then you get something in the mail a couple days later. And every time it's like, we went to the site and there was no odor detected. So you can imagine the frustration when you're standing amongst your peers and people from other towns, which is very embarrassing, that come here to play against us, you know, in games, and they can't breathe. And so there could be 50 to 100 people standing there all smelling it. And then you get the report and it says there was no odor detected. And so it's kind of like, I don't know how they're being held accountable and exactly what they're doing. But if the DEC is getting these reports saying that they're not smelling any odor, they're obviously false records, because the smell is unbearable to the point where you cannot take a deep breath and you get headaches, nausea, dizziness. It's absolutely atrocious the way it makes you feel.
All right, let's get some feedback from listeners. This is Joseph in Hector. Hey, Joseph, go ahead.
Hi, Evan. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
One quick thing. When you were talking, I was listening to your intro to the show, and you mentioned the 6,000 tons a day of garbage that's going up there. And I think you said that equates to 12,000 tons. It's really 120,000 pounds. Not 12,000. So just a real quick correction there. And I also want to take issue with Supervisor Schmitter's guesstimation of, 50% of the people just go about their daily lives when they're inundated with this unbearable stench. I don't think that's correct either. But what I really wanted to point out was I live in the heart of the Finger Lakes wine and tourism industry. I live on the east side of Seneca Lake, and I've watched this industry take off and become really a world-class destination. We see people from, if you go to the Watkins Glen State Park, you'll hear, 10, 12 different languages being spoken. So people really do come here from all over. And the northern gateway to the Finger Lakes wine and tourism region is exit 41 off the thruway. First thing you see is Del Lago Casino and Resort. And then you head south to come to the wineries and restaurants and B&Bs and whatever, and you drive right by this 280-foot tall, massive stinking pile of garbage. So what a welcome to a world-class tourist destination. And that's really all I had to say.
Well, Joseph, thank you. I appreciate that. And by the way, never trust Connections math, especially mine. But thank you, Joseph. 6,000 tons a day, it's a lot of trash. And if you're just joining us, it's the largest landfill in the state. That's kind of mind-boggling for some people who realize that, the trash can't all be coming from us. A lot of it comes from downstate, New York City, in that area. And so the question is, does it get capped now, as it was supposed to be, or do the operators get another 15 years to bring in trash and expand this already really, really large landfill. So, other feedback. Thank you, Joseph. Ariel writes to us to say the towns of Parenton and Macedon are going through the same thing with the High Acres landfill because it conveniently straddles two different towns and two different counties. It is an absolute boondoggle to manage, and odors remain out of control for residents for miles around, depending on which way the wind is blowing. That's from Ariel on YouTube. Also on YouTube, on the WXXI News YouTube feed, Sydney says, I find it astonishing that a landfill like this is so close to a famous village like Seneca Falls. The mountain of garbage severely detracts from the tourist attraction that is Seneca Falls. That comes from Sydney. Patrick wants to know, who owns this land? I think some names should be thrown around so we know who the man behind the curtain is. It's not the town board. No, that's correct, Patrick. The town of Seneca Falls does not own this landfill. Yvonne Taylor, what should people know about the ownership here?
Yes, thank you. Waste Connections is owned by Texas.
No relation.
Texas Corporation. So, no. No. And, so they're the ones, this out-of-state for-profit corporation is the owner of this landfill. They have no real ties to Seneca Falls. And, for that matter, we now have the first female governor in New York State. And it's really, she is facing whether or not to literally trash the birthplace of women's rights, Seneca Falls, on her watch, which we believe would be a huge political black eye for her. So now that we have to set our sights on the governor and her Department of Environmental Conservation, everybody needs to speak out and say enough is enough, shut this landfill down.
844-295-TALK, listeners, if you want to join the conversation, 844-295-8255, 263-WXXI if you're calling from Rochester, 263-9994. You can email the program connections@WXXI.org. KS says, embarrassment is right. What an abuse of one of the most special natural locations in the world, the Finger Lakes. As long as the money is the be-all, end-all, it's just another sad trade-off. That is from KS. And Michael says, I'm part Seneca, and the Finger Lakes is sacred territory. Why does it have to be desecrated and polluted with garbage from New York City? Get rid of the landfill. That's from Michael. Well, let me ask all three of our guests about this. I understand Michael's sentiment there, but realistically, this is not about getting rid of a 400-acre landfill. This is about whether it gets the chance to expand for another 15 years. So what's the ideal situation, Yvonne? I mean, I don't know if ideal is the right word, but what is the optimal situation? Let me ask all of our guests. I'll start with Yvonne Taylor from Seneca Lake Guardian. What should happen next year, and what should happen going forward with that property?
So the sooner that landfill is closed and capped, the sooner the emissions, the harmful forever chemical PFAS-laden leachate production reduces, the sooner people can get back to living their lives and enjoying their homes with their families. And so, I mean, this landfill is full. If they expand, they'll be putting 6,000 tons of garbage atop a former Superfund site for another 15 years. It has to close. And for those who keep saying, well, if it closes, what are we going to do? The garbage has to go somewhere. That is exactly the question that Waste Connections wants you to be stymied with, because that is not the question to be asking. The question is, will New York State start implementing its own solid waste management plan? It's a multi-100-page document that is a roadmap to reducing the amount of waste in the first place, robust recycling statewide, robust composting statewide, and using landfills as a last resort. The solutions are there. We just need the political capital to get to those solutions.
But that could take months or years, and at least in the short term, is there a place for this trash to go to that's not Seneca Meadows? Yvonne.
Yes. There are 27 active landfills in New York State currently. Most of them, 25 of them, have additional capacity, enough capacity to take this waste while we're turning this huge throwaway culture ship around and moving towards zero waste in the circular economy. And those landfills are not in identified disadvantaged communities that are harming people directly. They're farther away, and they're not on, close to the Cayuga Nation, for example. So the solution is there. We just need to do it.
Okay. Let me ask Mark Pittifer a little bit more about that idea about, when Michael says shut down the landfill or get rid of the landfill, I don't know that is likely, but what is the ideal situation for you at Waterloo Container there, Mark?
Well, it's like you said, they're requesting a 15-year expansion, and let's just be honest, they already signed their agreements. They already got their expansion. That expansion was till 2025. And I'll never forget, it was 2021, and I read the headline that they were seeking an expansion to go till 2040, and every single person you talked to was shocked. And that's why I want to take the opportunity to express. We are neighbors with these people. These are hardworking men and women that have an essential job to do, and our battle is not with these employees. Waste Connections, as Yvonne Taylor mentioned, Waste Connections threw over $400,000 since 2019 into just the town of Seneca Falls local election for influence between mailers and radio and websites, et cetera, et cetera. That's the impact. The impact is you can't even tell people the facts. You can't even tell them the truth because they're blindsided left and right by mailer after mailer after mailer. So, but the good news is, Governor Hochul is familiar with Seneca Falls. And we'd like to thank her for coming here as often as she does. She knows what's at stake, and we're hopeful that she'll make the right decision. But I think, Evan, I didn't want to leave without saying what Yvonne Taylor mentioned about the expansion not just being an actual expansion. They actually have to dig up part of the former Superfund site, which is buried beneath. Before the DEC existed, before liners existed, you can't even imagine what was thrown in there. Now, okay, for certain standards, maybe it has settled or whatever they want to say, but the fact before us remains the same. They have to dig out that landfill. Then they have to reline it, and they have to place 15 years at 6,000 tons a day on top of that. It's no secret that the wells surrounding the landfill are all contaminated, if not most of them. It's a tragedy. So the ideal situation is they stick to their original agreement, they get held to their original agreed upon closure date, and there will still be maintenance, of course. There will be years, decades of maintenance that will have to take place. But like Yvonne said, once it's capped, the odor will decrease substantially. Obviously, the truck traffic will decrease significantly. The gall nuisance, the seagull nuisance, the dust, all of that stuff will start to get less and less and less. And for a business that's already established, that's 45 years in the wine and craft beverage industry, we would like to expand. We would like to expand.
By the way, the Seneca Falls population is just below 7,000 people, and this is a company that no one denies the fact they have spent tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on local government races, this out-of-town company. So they've been very effective at doing that. I will say that. And Michelle Grillone, I've got an email from Jake, wants to know, what can anybody do? Well, you got involved, Michelle. What would you tell people they can do about this?
Yeah, I first started getting involved by attending a rally years ago when they wanted to expand, the first time when I moved back to this area. And then I started writing letters because I felt like I needed to get my opinion over to, the local governments and state governments. I write letters and emails to the DEC because I feel like if I'm not doing it, then maybe they're not hearing like what is at stake here. And the numbers, one thing I wanted to mention, my oldest is 16. I also have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. I have never, ever heard of such high numbers of pneumonias at our school, in our school districts, and with the kids are my children's ages, and asthma. The numbers of pneumonias that I've heard about this year and last year are like record high, and the asthma that these kids have is unbelievable. Everybody has an inhaler basically at the school now. And so to be able to play in these gyms when they get filled with these smells and on the athletic fields is unbelievable. So I just started trying to get involved, and I got pulled into a couple groups. One with, that's how I kind of have met other people in the area who also oppose it. I do know Mark. Yvonne and I have met, and I have been going to the different supervisor meetings and just trying to do as much as I can.
Mm-hmm. Rajesh says, watching on YouTube, says, on our way to Keuka Lake, we take the next exit off 90 just to avoid the landfill because the smell is abominable. I know there are other people who feel that way. So, Yvonne, as we get ready to close the program, there is a town board meeting tomorrow night in Seneca Falls. I think you guys are doing something. Anything you want to leave with listeners, Yvonne Taylor?
Yes, if you've been listening to this program and you are concerned and you think you want to hold the Seneca Falls Town Board responsible, please join us tomorrow. It's April Fool's Day, ironically. So Tuesday, April 1st at 5:15, we're going to meet outside ahead of their meeting at 130 Ovid Street, Seneca Falls. Please join us to express your disappointment.
Yvonne, thank you for making time for this program today.
Thank you.
Co-founder and vice president of Seneca Lake Guardian. Mark Pittifer with Waterloo Container. Mark, thanks for cutting into your workday to talk to Connections today.
Thank you so much, Evan.
Michelle Grillone, a local parent there in Waterloo. Good luck to your family, Michelle. Thanks for being with us.
Great. Thanks, Evan.
And our thanks to the supervisor of the town of Seneca Falls, Frank Schmitter, for being generous with his time this morning and recording that interview as well. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The board, other board members, are welcome anytime on Connections to talk about this issue. From all of us, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching on the WXXI News YouTube channel. We are back with you tomorrow on member-supported public media.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.